and welcome to the Pinstripe Post. My name is Ryan Sampson, but he's the star of the show, Joel Sherman. Joel, how you doing, man?
I'm good, Ryan. Yourself?
I'm doing well. Since we last spoke, the Yankees...
No, you're not. You're not.
No, I'm not, to be
No.
honest with you. I wanted to not come out firing yet, but I got to be honest with you. I'm not doing well as a Yankees fan. I'm looking forward to having this conversation with you today because since the last time we spoke, the Yankees did get swept by the Cincinnati Reds, and then they lose the series against the Boston Red Sox. Joel, it has not been pretty, to say the least, with this Yankee squad in the month of June and leading into July here. You can look at all the numbers, Joel. We already know them, right? 6-16 in the last 22 games. They're 4-9 against the Red Sox and Orioles this season. 0-6-1 in the last 7 series. They haven't won a series in their last 7 series. The June swoon has turned into mediocre baseball again for the Yankees. And this feels like 3 seasons in a row I've seen this team fall off a cliff. But I want to start with first pitch here, Joel, and just talk about what's going on with this Yankees team. And I got to start off with the way this team has played now. Are you, for you, is it concerning that it now seems to be 3 years in a row where, at least this year and 2 years ago, we start off hot, and now all of a sudden this team just falls into mediocre baseball where the rest of the lineup doesn't perform well, but sans Judge, and now in this case, sans Judge and Soto, and it just seems to be this acceptance of we're just grinding through it. Injuries happen. It's baseball. It's a long season. I hear all excuses from Aaron Boone and company. I don't know, Joel. What is your sense right now with this Yankee squad?
So do you find it unacceptable because they've got a $300 million plus payroll? They made this is a team with $300 million plus payroll. They made a gigantic move in the offseason to go for it. They added further to their starting pitching, and they're an historic team that needs to do this. Is that the biggest problem you have?
Absolutely.
Well, I just described the Los Angeles Dodgers.
But
who, by the way, have the 4th best record in the major leagues, a half a game better than the team with the 5th best record in the major leagues, the New York Yankees. They're the same exact team this year, right? Ohtani, Soto, they did Yamamoto, the Yankees did Stroman. The Dodgers have a short lineup. The Dodgers are, with everything they did with starting pitching, they probably need to add starting pitching in the next few weeks. They've got real problems too. There is no perfect solution to putting a team together. Having said that, if you're asking my opinion of the current Yankees, you know I always try to start with some level of perspective. You're a Yankee fan. So when they were good, you were bathed in confetti. And when they're bad, it's all tears. And the question is this a bad period or a bad team? And so I almost would throw it back to you. Do you actually believe that this is a bad team? They might be.
I think they are.
I don't know. And they're a bad team because of why?
Because
in comparison to the league. Right? Because if the Dodgers were in this division, they trailed the Orioles by the same amount as the Yankees. They have a half a game better record than the Yankees.
They do, but here's the thing, Joel. And if you were to look at this team, let's say future, right? Look in the playoffs. Let's say the Yankees do make a wild card here. Do you think this Yankees team currently constructed can beat the Orioles, the Red Sox, or even the Tampa Bay Rays at this point in their own division?
Do you think the Dodgers could beat the Phillies, the Braves, the Brewers?
I do.
Currently constructed.
I do.
The Dodgers have been one of the biggest postseason chokers in everything but
as of the Yankees.
Pandemic year when they, a short year with a weird playoff where they won the championship. So maybe the Yankees and Dodgers are the same organization, sans the winning in a pandemic year. They know how to kind of spend a lot of money to get to certain wins, but if you believe there's a certain kind of team that wins championships, are they both teams missing something in their DNA that's keeping them from it? You're a fan, and there's this tendency to think a team is better when it's playing well and worse when it's not. The Yankees are not as bad as they've played the last 3 weeks. That there's just no way they're that bad. In a normal season, and they have Cole now, I assume that it will get better. I mean, it's a sin of the construction of the team if it isn't, right? If you have Cole, Judge, and Soto, and you believe in wins above replacement, those guys in their worst season will have 15 WAR. in their best season, they might combine for 25 or more. And Soto and Judge are probably in the midst of as good a seasons as they're going to have. And I would expect Cole will get his act together in the second half. If all that continues, I mean, it would be hard for them to be a bad team. We're talking about three of the best players in the world. So, unless you think they're the Angels who had Ohtani and Trout and then couldn't put a good team around them, and that's how this team is constructed, I would still assume the team is good. The question for me wouldn't be bad versus, good. It would be they're designed to be great and try to win a championship. They're going to be at least good, I would think. Again, barring more major injuries, I think they're a good team. At some point, they'll break out of this, right? Well, Alex Verdugo is at least an average major league player. Volpe's at least an average major league player.
Is it Volpe?
Volpe is an overall average major league player. There's a whole player, not just the bad batting average he has right now. He's at least an average major league player. Stroman is a better than average starting pitcher. They have enough there. Clay Holmes is in the worst run maybe as a Yankee. Do you really believe this is Clay Holmes? And maybe, but he's been one of the 5 to 10 best relievers in baseball for 4 years. So
they also haven't recorded a save as a team in the last 20 games.
Yeah, so maybe this is it. Maybe they're going to play 200 baseball for 4 months. I don't believe that, Ryan. I believe that they're at least good. Have they done a bad job to get to great? I think that's and what would scare me if I were you, if I were a Yankee fan, was even if this reverses now, what they have shown, like in the Jekyll Hyde, that this is in them again. This is part of their portfolio. When things go bad, they're not stopping it at a 3-game losing streak or a bad week. This is turned into 3 weeks where every phase of the game has fallen apart. And I think their confidence is a mess. I think that weekend series at Fenway Park began to really wreck them confidence-wise. The 9 stolen bases, to me, did something to their self-esteem, like they got punched in the jaw and they had a bit of a glass jaw. And it kind of stirred awake the Red Sox, which is something you historically never want to do. In some ways, this feels like the long form of the 2004 ALCS, which is they let Ortiz get a couple of big hits, and then all of a sudden the Red Sox had life, and you blink twice and they won the ALCS. This is kind of the serial regular season version of that, where they're letting people back. They're letting the Orioles get away from them a little, and they're letting teams catch them from behind a little bit, where they might put themselves even in playoff jeopardy if this were to continue for another few weeks. So I think they're good. I think that they've revealed some real questions of character, leadership, and overall quality of the team beyond their stars.
Right. And that's ultimately where I wanted to hit you here a little bit, was the top heavy of this roster, right? It's the top heavy of this roster. Like you say to the Dodgers, you have your stars. They're the best in the world, but it's the rest of that team that you're constructed. I mean, those guys, don't get me wrong, they're taking up a lot of that $300 million payroll. But at the end of the day, though, it is a 26-man roster that needs to compete and put a good team together. You say there's a good team in there. I would argue there's not a good team in there, because we saw the worst season the Yankees have had in almost 25 years plus last year. We saw the 2022 collapse, and now I'm starting to see the same signs. To your point, the leadership isn't there. The quality play isn't there. I think the sample size is becoming large enough on a player like Anthony Volpe, where the guy can't be a leadoff hitter, clearly. He mentally, there's mistakes there that you say, where are you at this point in this game? I don't think Gleyber Torres is going to return to form that he was in 2019. DJ LeMahieu looks like he's battling father time right now. Verdugo's Verdugo. I have no problem with Verdugo, but guys like Trent Grisham, I don't know if you can rely on them to actually be a good baseball team when all is said and done, because you look at what he did with the Padres last year. They didn't play well. I mean, he was part of that team. So there's just, the layers are there where you start to question, why is Ben Rice my third best hitter on my baseball team right now? How is that progressed into where we are. Giancarlo Stanton, you expect him to get hurt every year. You talked to Brian Cashman and asked him about this, and he even said he's just a guy you can't rely on. He's a guy that's going to get hurt every single year. I can't believe in my heart of hearts that Giancarlo Stanton, Anthony Rizzo are the two guys that go down, and this is the reason why the lineup all of a sudden can't produce anymore.
Yeah, so the question again is about sample size. Do you feel, I think it was, about 75 games where they had the best record in baseball, that it was utter fraudulence?
I think they just got hot, and that's ultimately.
So being hot for an extended 75 games weighs less than being bad for 20.
Because, again, the larger sample size is what I saw last year. Because, don't get me wrong, Joel, this is practically the same team as last year with adding Soto. I mean, this is the same roster pretty much. And you added Stroman. I mean, what's different?
So you're saying it's the same team as last year, which won 82 and added perhaps the best hitter in the world and an above-average starter. I would say that's a 90-win team.
And they're probably going to win 90 games, and I just ultimately...
But that's probably what we thought. I mean, me personally, I picked them to finish third in the East, right? Like, I think they played over their heads.
So that's what you're saying. They played over their heads the first 2 months of the season.
But you're suggesting they are what they are the last 3 weeks. And I'm suggesting if you have the quality, the greatness at the top, and enough good players, and I think they have good players, there should be something else. But I also, this is part of the problem of social media. And I got to say, I'm sorry, Ryan, being the old man on the lawn, a little bit of your generation. Only today matters. Like what I'm saying today. We did shows together. I was not in favor of Grissom. I was not in favor of Verdugo. I was not in favor of Stroman. I was not in favor of who they put on this roster and in their clubhouse. To me, you want to get on it. Let's be very specific.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Yankees unbelievably have made the same mistake with a center fielder 3 times in a row. How many low passion, low energy center fielders do you want to see if they could screw in a light bulb? You gave $150+ million to Jacoby Ellsbury. It didn't work. You gave $70 million. And by the way, it's one of the reasons you're not doing more with your payroll, because you're still paying $10 million a year to Aaron Hicks, not only this year, but next year, another low energy player. And then you bring in Trent Grisham, who is, to me, a low energy player. The play in center field where he nonchalants the ball, that to me, so I want to say it. I've said it out loud. I've said it to Yankee people. Trent Grisham plays in a certain way. And Aaron Boone brought this up where he said there's certain guys who have to play kind of calm, smooth, stylish, Robinson Cano, Gleyber Torres types to kind of get the best out of them. I got it. But within that, you have to be technically sound. And there is no player in the entire major leagues who should understand the implication of not being serious on a ball on the ground coming to him in the outfield more than Trent Grisham, who missed a Juan Soto hopper in the outfield during the 2019 playoffs to decide that series when it got by him. Now, it took a bad bounce, but he's got to understand, a ball could take a bad bounce. It could hop off your glove. You need to be playing serious, even within the style of all times. So I knew this about Trent Grisham before the Yankees got him. Can't play on my team. If I run the team, can't play on my team. I've talked about this with other players. It's like the low energy of Jacoby Ellsbury. Can't play on my team. And the Yankees have done this now with 3 center fielders where you just sit in like, where's the power packed on some guys here? Where's the concentration? So I agree. There is a problem of construction. Some of the problem of construction is you're trying to win, so you're always chasing it. So every once in a while, you end up holding your nose because you never draft 1 through 10. So it's like, how do we get players? We have to overspend. We have to get the Coles and the Sotos,
right,
etc., because that's not available to us in the first round of the draft. And then even that secondary stuff, once Yamamoto floats out of their hands, like where are they going as an organization? And I think it's backed them up into some problematic situations. That look, I did not like the construction of the team, and yet I feel like it still has a lot of quality on it, and we'll see if they could get out of this. But if I were to further this, and I know it's going to be, but why don't I let you get there?
Yeah, no, exactly. So that's where I want to kind of go here a little bit, Joel, is let's go to do up, where we're going to rank 3 things here. And I want you to rank these 3 things for you. The most concern, I get it. And I agree. The construction, not great there. So, but there should be quality enough there. But there's 3 things I want you to rank the most concerning for you watching this team over this slump. If you were to rank these 3 things, the lineup, Sands, Judge, and Soto, so everyone else in that lineup, the bullpen, the way it's performed, and lastly, the way Boone has managed / the mental mistakes and errors on routine plays, the hustle plays down the line, those type of plays. Of those 3 things, including player development in that section too, mind you, because I want to talk about Anthony Volpe here in a sec. How would you rank those 3 things the most concern that you've seen over the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, can I have a 3-way tie for first?
Probably.
I mean, I am blown away that they're in the same exact situation this year offensively that they were last year. Just instead of a one-man team, it's a two-man team. And you see what happens when neither of those guys produces runs. It becomes very, very difficult for them to score runs. They haven't stolen a base in 3 weeks. Meanwhile, they're like minus 25 in stealing bases, like what they've allowed and what they've done. So I actually think putting Volpe 6th, besides maybe taking some pressure off of him, maybe he'll start running again, because maybe he doesn't want to run in front of Soto and Judge when he's on. They wanted to get more athletic this year. Perhaps they did with Verdugo, but it isn't showing up on the base path. So they're again at the mercy of the home run and the mercy of 2 players. And look, some of this is difficult because not our first show, Ryan.
No.
Gleyber Torres, not a guy I would have tried to move at other times. He's a nice guy. I think he wants the Yankees to win, but to me, his concentration and his energy go too often away. But within that, I was even thinking in the offseason, can they really trade him? Because he might be their 3rd best offensive player. Well, when he's been healthy this year, he hasn't hit. DJ LeMahieu hit very well in the second half last year. Could the Yankees have expected 90% of that? They've gotten like 10% of that. It's a real challenge for multiple players in their lineup. Verdugo, LeMahieu, Volpe to just get the ball out of the infield. So I'm blown away by the lack of depth of the lineup. They've had 2 kind of like big blowout games, one against Boston over the weekend and one against Toronto recently, which could convince you, because they go into the overall numbers, that the overall numbers are fine. They're not, because a point I make often, you could score 14 runs one day and 0 the next, or you could score 7 and 7. In both, no matter which way you do that, you average 7 runs, but you lose one of the games. If it's 14 and 0, you probably win both games, you score 7. The Yankees are vacillating too much. There's not enough quality offense, and when Judge and Soto get shut down, it's bad. That's one. The bullpen is a huge issue that got covered up for the better part of 2+ months by excellent starting pitching that gave them length and camouflaged a bullpen that lacks depth and must, if the Yankees are going to be true contenders, has to add 2 guys from outside. And by the way, at a very difficult thing, it's very difficult to nail relievers. They're very volatile. The Yankees got to nail 2 trades for relievers, or 1 trade that brings in 2 relievers, because to me, they're at least too short. At least too short. As for the Boone issue, when this is the way Aaron Boone manages, and he is regular season wise one of the most successful managers in the history of the game. And I think a guy his players like a great deal. And by the way, a really terrific guy. I love dealing with Aaron Boone. But there is a moment where if you keep dabbling in unreality, you lose credibility. And suggesting in real time that DJ LeMahieu was running hard on the back end of that double play, that's unreality. Suggesting that Grisham has to play a certain way, I get it. You could play a certain way, but that was beyond style. That was indifference. That was absent-mindedness. And the more and more, and I do think there was the bizarre play with LeMahieu and Volpe. I do believe Volpe saw the umpire do this, which was for fair ball, and thought there had been a timeout called, and he thought the ball was foul. It lacked court awareness, clearly, right? I think LeMahieu has just got his head up his butt and didn't understand, fall down, run backwards, stay in the pickle to get the runner home. He's kind of because you say what you want about LeMahieu, but he's a high IQ player.
He is, and that's what's surprising in that play.
Lost his IQ. Ben Rice the other day lost track of where a fly ball was and started running back to second base. They are mounting. Are they mounting because the Yankees are in a bad period and everyone's trying to do too much and overthinking it and it all looks bad? But if you're going to keep publicly, this happened to Joe Girardi also. Joe Girardi kind of was not truthful about a lot of stuff when he was the manager. He just was off. He dabbled in enough truth to give himself plausibility, but it wasn't kind of the truth when he talked. And, when things go wrong, people are going to point that out. Boone is never going to criticize players publicly in the way that fans like you want blood and want him to.
I know he's not.
But I think he has to get closer to avoiding unreality. And look, I'm going to say it again about Grisham. There's going to be a moment this season where Grisham does one of those side saddle catches that looks great in the outfield. I'm saying it here. Now, and it's going to clunk his glove, and it's going to cost them. And to me, if you're not correcting it, you're condoning it. And I'm watching too much that feels addressable and correctable, that if you're not, you could say, I don't like the game played that way, and tolerate it. Tolerating it is condoning it. If you've seen enough stuff over time to suggest you got to pull a guy from a game or sit him a few games, and maybe certain players aren't ever going to get that message. But to me, there's been enough in these 3 weeks where you have to say, these are the New York Yankees. These are the rules of the road. And this is what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And I think they missed that. And I think Teddy's barking. Teddy, stop it.
Teddy understands, and he sees it right now, too, with the Yankees. I mean, and I think that's a great point, Joel, about the tolerance, right? Because that is where I think a lot of Yankees fans are starting to see where it's the unreality, to your point, of Boone going, and this is what he said about DJ. You see a guy battling to hustle it out and get in gear running. I don't know about you, Joel, but the first thing you're taught in baseball is hustle out of the box. No matter what, ground ball, hustle out of the box. And I think to your point, maybe DJ's too far in his head, and Volpe, same thing, but you're a 22-year-old Volpe, and you should be running hard no matter what down the third base line to score that run, not looking and watching the play there. That shouldn't even be in your mind in that point. So I think the tolerance and the defense of Boone, not willing to wear his players out in the media, right? He's not going to, we know that. I'm sure he holds his players accountable, or at least tries to, behind the scenes, stuff that the media and maybe you guys know more about than we do. But wasn't that the reason why Girardi was thrown out of the town? Because why you said he wasn't truthful in what he says? He was a guy who was too hard on his players sometimes about the lack of hustle and awareness on things like that. And this feels where, again, the mental errors build up. You're seeing more and more of this. This is just the Yankees now. It just feels like this is the Yankees where they're accepting this mediocre of, hey, the routine baseball play is no longer routine for us, where there's going to be mistakes that happen, and we're in the heat of the moment, I guess, grinding it out is what they're just trying to push on us fans while we're watching this throughout the season.
Yeah. The question is, Do they look bad, or is more going on here, Ryan? And I would, again, caution, I'm going to say the word every week about being myopic.
Mm-hmm.
None of the 30 managers call out their players. It's just not done. Like I was around the 80s and 90s. Managers shit talk their players all the time. Players shit talked each other, coaches, managers. Like, that's just not the way it's done. So I think the more important thing is a larger question issue, which is two things. Number one, the Yankees get eliminated. I write the same column every year when they were making the playoffs, which is they get eliminated for basically the same reason every year. Their front office would not agree with me, by the way. The team they play plays baseball better than them. Say whatever you want about the Astros. Jose Altuve, Bregman, these are high IQ baseball players. And when the game calls for knocking a ball to the right side to score a run in a 3-3 game, they don't Josh Donaldson swing the bat from their ass and hope for a 3-run homer when that's not what's necessary to win a game that is precious. Not a June 7th game where you're playing casino baseball, but you're playing in the postseason. And if you're the Yankees and you think you're going to be playing for everything, some attention to detail all year about playing baseball well, going 3.5 weeks without a steal would be an example of this. The head up the ass play is an example. They don't play baseball well. And it gets them when each game has much more important than June 7th or, May 4th. It gets them in the postseason, and it's getting them again now. It gets them in these streaks because they don't get out of it because they make bad plays and lose close games. The other thing is this a mentally tough team or not? Maybe this is one of those ones with 20/20 hindsight, you say, but the dynasty Yankees, and nothing should probably be compared to it, but I mean, they had historic mentally tough players. Jeter, Rivera, El Duque, David Cohn. These were, when you talk about grinders, you talk about people who understood the 162 games and then how valuable the precious games were. Is this a mentally tough team? Because to your point, you're talking about the cyclical nature of them going bad and it's staying bad in previous years. I think tough-minded players and teams, when that's their ethos, figure out how to dig out of it.
Right.
To some degree, are we watching the Astros do it again?
Yeah.
Where they're kind of having the opposite season of the Yankees, from hopeless to hopeful again, though they lost a couple of games over the weekend, and maybe they're just not good enough. But I would ask real questions about the baseball acumen of the group, and I would ask questions about the mental toughness of the group, because it's one thing to talk to me about grit and grind, but I'm from the Jeff Van Gundy school, which is, I used to love when Mark Jackson would say something like, oh, that player told me before the game that he's going to hustle like crazy or whatever. He really cares. And Jeff Van Gundy always used to say the same thing. Don't tell me, show me. He goes, we're all experts on this. We're all watching the same game. You don't have to tell me there's going to be a lot of 50-50 balls in every game. Who gets those balls? I love the thing that I think it was Steve Kerr said about, why am I blanking on the Nick guard, who played
Jalen
a lot.
Brunson?
What's that? No.
No.
The other Villanova guy, not DiVincenzo.
Josh Hart.
Josh Hart.
Yeah.
Was with the team, the U.S. team last year. And he said, they're not 50-50 balls with Josh Hart. They're 80-20 balls. Well, don't tell me. Show me. Josh Hart shows me. He doesn't have to tell me, right? And grinding players don't have to talk to me about grit and grind. We're watching 3 freaking hours of baseball a night, 162 games, 9 innings at a shot. Just show me. And I don't think the Yankees would be accused of being mentally tough with a lot of grind the last 3 weeks. And we're going to find out. Are they mentally tough with the ability to grind? Because this is low. You represent the fan base. I represent the people who cover this team in some. It's in this city in particular, it's about to get tough. Are they tough guys who can get out of this?
And that's that's ultimately where we're at here. And that's where, again, I'm going to pivot here to Radio Rational, because this comes back to ultimately who put this team together, right? Like, who is finding these players that are mentally tough, baseball IQ, the skill, the necessary, are they good enough to win? And that comes to Brian Cashman, and that's my Radio Rational take here for this week is it's time to really, really, really hold this man accountable and say he's lost his fastball and he cannot construct a championship roster anymore. I just haven't seen it. The way, and you've highlighted it perfectly to a T, the last 3 years that we've seen from this ball club. It is a team that has fallen short of expectations tremendously. It is veteran players that you've acquired that just have not been able to meet the moment. And it's ultimately these baseball IQ players that they're low. And I don't know if he has the right guy managing the team either, because he accepts sort of what happens on the field. And, like you say, show me, don't just tell me that it's grinding, and don't tell me Aaron Boone for the third year in a row. It's right in front of us. We already know that. We know that as Yankees fans. We know what the expectations are, but it's just the buildup of we're ready for the year. We're ready to get going. The team looks great. The roster looks good. Like, this is going to be good. Hopefully this year we're changing it up. And then you see the same thing for 3 years in a row. Again, it comes back to Brian Cashman. Acquiring players like Juan Soto is great, but at the end of the day, you knew Giancarlo Stanton was going to get hurt. I can't harp on that one enough. He got hurt. That should not derail your lineup and what you expected for this offense. Anthony Volpe, I don't know if he's good enough, Joel. Like, he's a great fielder, young kid, good head on his shoulders, but I just don't know if he's talented enough. When I see, and again, this is unfair, Bobby Witt, Gunnar Henderson, Rafaela last night hitting a home run in the 9-hole. These are things where you start to wonder, is Volpe just a light hitting shortstop, good kid, maybe a great for the clubhouse, but at the end of the day, he's never going to be that highly touted prospect that we heard Brian Cashman and company tout out. So I just got to ask you, is that a Radio Rational take where it's time to really wonder, is Brian Cashman really the man for the job anymore for the Yankees?
So 3 weeks ago, I think probably on this show, without ever saying that's what it was, we might have said, hey, is Brian Cashman the executive of the year? Besides pulling down the Soto trade for, secondary pitching to some degree, and one good prospect, he traded 3 relievers for Verdugo, who's hitting cleanup and playing the hell out of left field. And Stroman, after they Yamamoto wants to play with the Dodgers, is kind of pitch for pitch with Yamamoto as far as performance. And didn't he turn Jake Cave into Luis Heel? And didn't they, 3 weeks ago, you felt different about Volpe. Like the 30th pick in the draft, they found Anthony Volpe and were able to buy him out of going to Vanderbilt. That was 3 weeks ago. And I'd like to see more. I have written that I think over the last few years, I think the front office has lost feel for putting a roster together. Again, I did not love the moves in the offseason, the ones that were working for even the first 3 months. But it's a reminder, it's 162 games. We're not there yet. If Hal Steinbrenner is ever going to move on from Brian Cashman, and that's an open question, he's not going to do it in July or August. He's going to wait till the end of the season. And so since they've played 2 seasons so divergently different, one for 72 games where they were the best team in the sport, and one for about 22, 23 games where they've been the worst, I think that we need more information than to just say today, hey, he doesn't know what, like 3 weeks ago, he's the executive of the year. Today, he's again a piñata. I think I'm not running away. I'm on record multiple times.
I know you are.
You know that there was a clash between me and the general manager at the GM meetings. Though again, that was overstated, but whatever. I think the front office has lost the baseball operations has lost some feel about what works here, how does this all meld together? And there's some big picture stuff that's gone terrible. Like, I'll give you 2 examples that are really, really hurting them. And this starts with Hal Steinbrenner and what he wants and works down to the front office. Hal Steinbrenner has desperately wanted to stay under certain thresholds about payroll. And to do that, the Yankees stretched out, made a bad decision. Aaron Hicks, let's give him, instead of giving him 70 million for 4 years or 60 for 4 years, let's give him 70 over 7 because then it's a $10 million average. It brings down the annual value and whatever. Aren't we geniuses? Except for you're still paying Aaron Hicks not to play. They did the same thing with DJ LeMahieu, right? Like DJ LeMahieu probably was a guy at his age where you either walk away from him and say, we got 2 great seasons, or you say, we've got to contain it so that in year 4, which would be this year, it's a 4-year contract.
Should be a 4-year contract.
And instead, they stretched it out over 6.
Yep.
So even if they release him, it's going to become like Hicks. It's going to be sitting on the books for luxury tax purposes. They are a team that generally doesn't get ahead of the train as far as signing guys before free agency. The 2 guys they signed before free agency were Aaron Hicks and Luis Severino, who both went terrible at the moment they signed them to long-term contracts, which block other maneuvers. So they've done some big picture stuff that strategically has hurt them and is hurting them right now. But what is the totality? I don't know.
Okay.
The totality. Turning Jake Cave into Luis Heel is something. Turning 2 guys who aren't in the major leagues anymore into Clay Holmes is something. Finding Wandy Peralta on a scrap heap is something. There is a lot. When things go wrong, we tend to forget that, drafting towards the back of a round and finding Volpe and finding Austin Wells and finding Clark Schmidt has some value, especially if you start looking at like what else is picked. Now, in the case of Volpe, Gunnar Henderson was picked 10 or 12 picks later. So, but that means 40 picks went by with no team picking Gunnar Henderson also.
Correct.
So anyway, I think that there's real questions about feel, but I know we live in the hair trigger world. Be definitive. 3 weeks ago, Brian Cashman was in play for Executive of the Year. Today, he is not, and it's been 3 bad weeks. I think we need the whole season to see if this is 3 bad weeks or, hey, man, this was another time where you got a shot with a big payroll to put it together.
3 years ago.
And it's not good enough.
Right. It's not good enough. And I
mean,
hear you.
Say 3 years. They did win the division 3 years ago. You might not like how it ended. And
because Aaron Judge had one of the most historic seasons ever.
And they won a round of the playoffs. Like, where do the Mariners sign up for winning a round of the playoffs or getting
We're not the Seattle Mariners, though. You know what I mean?
I get it. But the Texas Rangers won the World Series last year and are probably going to be sellers over the next 3 weeks.
2 wild card teams last year. I know. You just got to get hot in October. I know. Right? I know that's the thing.
Every fan base only looks at their team and thinks every year should be a championship. They're very, very hard to win.
Correct.
The Rangers have won 1 in their history, and after winning, they're under 500. I think they're 6 under 500 and might be sellers. Like, the Dodgers are as expertly run as anyone in the sport, and they are essentially been the Yankees now for this period of time with the one crazy championship.
They are over 500 since Mookie Betts went out with a broken hand, though. They're 12-7 since Mookie went out. I mean, they're handling the injuries a little bit better, but to get your point,
they have the same exact record as the Yankees.
Same exact record. I get it.
You want to make it a 3-week season, Ryan? It's not a 3-week season.
I'm not talking about the 3. I'm talking about the 3 seasons, though. I'm talking about the 3 years.
Right. So the Yankees and the Dodgers have very similar kind of periods of time. The Dodgers get bounced by teams like the Diamondbacks in 3 straight last year in embarrassing fashion with their starting pitchers totaling about 6 innings. It's harder to win than every fan base accepts, and way harder to win than the Yankee fan base accepts because it has nothing but winning for 30 plus years, and your expectation is championship or bust. Having said that, don't ignore what I have been saying. I've been pretty critical here of emotional tactics of the manager, feel of the front office, but it's a 162 game, 6-month season. And at this very moment, when the team has played like the worst has been the worst team in baseball for 3 weeks.
Right.
It's easy to go off the rails crazy bad as much as it was to go off the rails crazy good about 72 games.
Right.
And now the Yankees are going to define themselves. If this is the 3 weeks, if this is the rest of the season, I don't know how anybody keeps a job. Like, this is the worst team in baseball for 3 weeks. Not one of the worst. This is worse than Colorado. This is worse than Miami.
And it's ugly.
This is worse than the White Sox for 3 weeks. But it's a 26-week season, the first 13 of which went pretty darn good for them. I think.
All right, we'll see.
Like we'll see it, and we'll go back. I didn't love this team. I don't expect it to be 100 wins, but I also don't expect it to be worse than the Rockies and the Marlins.
Totally understood. And it is ugly right now. And I think you were right about the Jekyll and Hyde of this team. The final thing I want to ask before I get to Tommy for Hoganalytics, the holes that you've seen in this roster, is it too much for Brian Cashman and company to address at the trade deadline coming up, considering the market and where it is right now when there's so many teams in flux? Do you think, Joel, that the Yankees can be able to address some of these holes or a lot of these holes, or is it going to be just too much with this team that they're just gonna have to figure it out,
Yeah, they can't fix everything that's been exposed in the last 3 weeks in the next 3 weeks.
Right.
Before July 30th at 6 p.m. That's not going to happen. And as almost always where we overvalue what happens at a trade deadline. I mean, we'll remember the trades that were incredibly valuable because a team wins the championship. But most trades turn out to be any place from neutral to negative, actually, as opposed to really positive. Because the real way baseball is played is it's hard to have a gigantic impact for 60 games. And you might just be about to have your worst 60 games. If I acquire, it's one of the reasons is the best relief pitcher I think the Yankees in Brian Cashman's time has ever acquired at the trade deadline was Kerry Wood, who had like a 6-something ERA and then pitched to a sub-1 ERA. So, like, oftentimes this is about go get people you think are actually good players and ignore what their statistics are to this point, especially relief pitchers. Because if some relief pitcher without a track record has a 150 ERA now, he's probably going to have a 550 ERA the rest of the year to get to 350 kind of thing. So there's that. This has to be fixed by the people who are there now. Like, can Stanton get healthy and stay healthy and stay a productive force in the middle of the lineup? Is what we've seen for about 3 weeks from Ben Rice close to real? Is there a good kick here for Gleyber Torres into free agency at age, 28 years old? It shouldn't be this bad. Can Alex Verdugo get the ball out of the infield more regularly? Can Anthony Volpe find a happy medium between the guy who has 2 weeks where you go, wow, and 2 weeks where you're like ready to send them back to Scranton? Is there some median 720 consistent OPS, play the heck out of shortstop and steal some bases again where it is? Like that, if some of that stuff or all of it doesn't happen, it isn't going to matter there's just every team needs offense, by the way. There's going to be very little of it available in the trade market. And like we did this last week where like the name Jonathan India is going to mean something, but like Jonathan India is okay. Like Cody Bellinger is going to be available. Cody Bellinger's okay. Like he's okay.
Yeah.
Like he's got the name because he won an MVP.
Correct.
But he's okay. He's not changing anybody's fate that much. So especially offensively, there's got to be more than a 2-man band. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. The one area that I think he's got to get right, and so hard to get relief pitching right, is they got to get at least 1, and I think 2, maybe 3 relief pitchers, and they got to pitch well the rest of the year. He's got to find another Kerry Wood out there, and maybe even a guy who they believe can close games and be at least a security blanket if Clay Holmes kind of shakes again during this period. It's not easy to do, but they're not solving everything in the trade market.
Yep, that's all I wanted.
Nor is any contender.
No, nor is any contender. But I just wanted to hear all the holes that you saw in the Yankees roster.
Yeah.
Again, let's bring in Tommy Hogan for Hoganalytics. What's up, Tommy?
What's up, guys? I've got a quick one for you today. And Joel, you may have to go deep in your Rolodex for this one, but I've got faith that it's up there for you. Do you know the last team to lose 15 of 20 games and then go on to win the World Series?
I mean, did the 19 Nationals at some point lose? They were like 15 under 500 at some point during that season.
They were 19-31. It's not the 2019 Nationals. It's the 2023 Texas Rangers.
Yeah.
They did it last year, and it kind of goes with the theme of this.
And they did it late, right? Didn't they do it late?
It was late. It was in August.
Right. So after they acquire Max Scherzer, Jordan Montgomery, and Aroldis Chapman to kind of fix what was wrong with them, they played their worst of the year. So I know that it won't hearten Yankee fans to hear that the team that won the championship last year played like shit for 3 weeks also, but they did.
It goes with the theme of the show. Are the Yankees bad, or is it just a bad period? And we saw last year with the Texas Rangers, for them, they proved it was just a bad period. Can the Yankees prove that it's just a bad period? And it's ugly, I get it, but is it just a bad period? Because we saw for 75 games, like you guys have been saying, that they looked really good. We had an episode a few weeks ago where we were asking, is this the best team that has been constructed by the Yankees to win a World Series from 2009? And now a month or two later, we're asking,
I think you asked that question, Ryan, right?
I did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I also didn't predict the Jekyll and Hyde roster that we would see here. Joel, average baseball is average baseball, but when it's the worst in baseball for a sustained period for 3 weeks, there's a justifiable reason to ask, what the hell am I watching right now? And is
there
this
would have
a
been
good team?
justifiable reasons to ask this about the Rangers in August last year.
It can happen.
Fair enough.
It can happen.
You know, it's get hot in October. I get it. You have to get hot in October. The right players.
Think when they were playing well, I said something like, there'll be a period this year where the Yankees get swept by the Rockies, because that's just the baseball season. There was the year where the Dodgers won 110. They went 1-6 against the Pirates, who I think might have had the worst record in the league. It's a crazy sport. It's not the SEC where Georgia just is not losing to a not good team, right? In a once a week. And there's a lot of vacillation of performance. And that's why I got back to strongly, and I would say it here, what bothers me is playing technically poor and seeming to lose their confidence group-wide, kind of like this fortitude, baseball IQ thing. That bothers me watching it. That would worry me. If I were you two, I'm Yankee fans, and I'm watching it. It's like, okay, there's slumps. There's team-wide slumps. But this team feels like it's allowing a certain snowball to happen beyond the just skill of the players. And that, when I'm watching it, that is very noticeable to me, that they have not taken a punch well. Those 9 stolen bases against the Red Sox felt like they got socked in the jaw, and they simply have not gotten up since then. That's one. Number two, they did such a great job of covering for Cole while he was out. Did something kind of did they take an exhale, like Cole's back, and all of a sudden, oh, now we're whole, and lose some footing? Because they really, if we're going to talk about fortitude, let's give them credit for that too, right? Is what felt like the most indispensable player didn't play for the first 70 plus games of the season, and the Yankees were the best team in the sport because everyone who does what that player did pitched great, the starting pitchers. Did they take their foot off the gas pedal a little because Cole came back, mentally? Nobody says, oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take the gas. It's got to be a subconscious thing. But I think the stolen bases thing really hit them, and Cole's return. I just wonder if they wow, we survived that, and they took it off, and now you're going to get a natural break after next weekend with the All-Star game. But they've got important games here. You don't want to let another week go by where 3 assholes like us get together again and start cutting them up.
If I could, Joel, just bring up another point that I think is underrated in what has gone wrong. We've talked about the lineup depth, and we knew Giancarlo Stanton was going to get hurt. Jason Dominguez getting hurt this team. That was their Giancarlo Stanton insurance. And Trent Grisham kind of is hand in hand with that as well. But the fact that they didn't have their Giancarlo Stanton insurance once he got hurt has really hurt, because he would go right in there, right into that middle of the order, playing center field. The guy that you have been critical of, Trent Grisham, would not be the center fielder right now. It would be Jason Dominguez. So Trent Grisham, I know we throw him into the Jacoby Ellsbury and the Aaron Hicks. He really was the third string center fielder on this team, and now the first two moves to get him in there have gotten hurt at the same time.
Yeah, but good teams figure out a way to navigate. What was the record with 12-7 without Mookie Betts?
Correct.
Like
You're right.
Mookie Betts is much more important to the Dodgers than Giancarlo Stanton is to the Yankees, and so and to the point of even the general manager, to his chagrin, said publicly, hey, this is part of his portfolio. He's going to get hurt. He was going to get hurt at some point. And that could have happened, by the way, in the first 2 months of the season when Dominguez was still rehabbing from Tommy John surgery. So, look, I think it's a bigger picture issue, especially this month. A lot of their prospects have been either hurt so far in the first half or underperformed. So, when you got to win the trade, you got to have stuff to pull from, and Brian Cashman's a good trader. He's able to pull things off. It probably a little tougher when you have as many Everson Pereira injuries and Oswald Peraza step back even further, and the kid Chase Hampton, I think, just got back on the mound as far as pitching, and Clayton Beater has been hurt, and
Will Warren struggled.
Has struggled. It's not, but by the way, the Mets are going through a lot of the same stuff also if they have to trade.
Right.
A lot of their Drew Gilbert, Jet Williams, Ronnie Mauricio kind of guys.
Acuna's brother's not been great, right? Luis Año.
And Acuna's brother has not performed real well. So, and I just wonder if this is just sport-wide, and we know the New York team's best, and therefore the Yankees and Mets are just on even footing with everyone who's dealing with underperformance or injury. But it does make the month tougher for both New York teams, especially the one that's kind of like clearly in the race right now in the Yankees and have to do stuff in the next 3 weeks.
All right. Tommy, thank you so much, man.
Of course.
All right, Joel, it's time for Joel's Notebook. I asked you this last night, and there's something that came to mind when Rafael Devers hit another two home runs last night, hit one off Cole again on Saturday. He tied David Ortiz for the most home runs for a Red Sox player that's hit against the Yankees. So I wanted to ask you, in your time of covering baseball, and I know you've covered the Yankees a long time as well, is there ever a player that come to mind where they've kind of just owned the moment against the Yankees and are a Yankee quote-unquote killer, and every time you see that player came up to, like, whether it was pitching or hitting, they just dominated every time, and you're like, the Yankees just don't know how to handle this player?
Well, it's kind of like in the lineage, right? Doesn't that answer have to be like David Ortiz? He kind of changed. Yeah, so I'll say this is those 03 and 04 in particular, the Yankees and Red Sox were playing a different sport, it felt like, from everybody else. I know ultimately the Yankees win the ALCS and a different team wins the World Series, but the two best teams in baseball, especially in 03 and 04, were the Yankees and the Red Sox. They were just both special. Their lineups were great. They had big game pitchers, both of them. And I just, you're watching the game, and if you're working for the New York Post, which obviously I do, you watch it from a Yankee-centric point of view. Why did things work or not work? You tend not to think about, like, why did it work or not work for the Red Sox? Sure, obviously, the Red Sox like third best after the Mets and Yankees, just because the teams played each other so much, including 2 7-game series in the postseason. And you're at every Yankee-Red Sox game. They feel like Super Bowls. That's how big even the regular season games were. And I'll just say this as somebody who is concentrating on the Yankees. It felt like every inning, Ortiz was up and Manny was on deck. Like, they didn't bat 9 times, but they were so great that your consciousness, if the Yankees are winning a game, and, you're sitting and saying, well, they're winning 4-3, and they just got out of the 7th inning, and the number 4-5 hitter made the last out. They better go 1, 2, 3 the next 2 innings, because if those two monsters get up, they're going to score more runs. It's a little bit Judge and Soto this year. I wonder if other teams are like, do these two guys bat in every inning, except for the rest of the Yankee lineup is nowhere near as good as the rest of that Red Sox lineup was, which had really good players in it. But it's just, there was this feeling, especially when it came to Ortiz, who was so instrumental in flipping the historic narrative of the Yankees as the dominant team in the relationship. And Ortiz did so much single-handedly by kind of like not tying himself to the negative history and changing it. And it just, you were so aware where Boston was in the lineup at all times and what the scoreboard said. Can Ortiz come up with a chance to change the game? Because you knew he'd be fearless about it and he kind of could rise to a moment. And Devers, I mean, at this point, just walk the guy. Like Garrett Cole's given up 8 homers to him in like 40 at bats. It's stunning. We're talking about maybe the best pitcher in the world. Can't get Rafael Devers out. And Devers special hitter.
Yeah, I mean, that second home run, that ball was way outside, and he just pulled that thing to right center. I mean, he crushed it. He owns them. He's been owning the Yankees in those big moments.
Started with the 103-mile-an-hour pitch against Chapman, right, where he hit a home run against essentially the same way, right, to left center field against them. He's a remarkably good hitter also who isn't afraid of the moment, right? Like he's clearly not bothered by the Yankees or Yankee Stadium or big booing crowds. But like Ortiz really stands out historically as a guy like he really changed the narrative as much as anyone for where we stand now, where it's like, oh, Boston kind of owns the Yankees a little bit psychologically for the last 20 years, and nobody did more to change that than David Ortiz.
Yep, he's been torturous to me for most of my time as being a Yankees fan. You know what's surprising, though, Joe, real quick, is just, did you notice who was number 1 on that list? Ortiz isn't even number 1 for the most home runs hit against the Yankees. Jose Bautista. Can you believe that?
For any team against
any
the
team,
Yankees,
correct? Any team, not the Red Sox.
At this stadium, like for what period of time?
I believe it was all time against the Yankees in his career. Jose Bautista had 16 home runs against the Yankees in his career against them. It's crazy. And Evan Longoria was on the list too, but those guys torture. Listen, Joel, we know there's 2 big series coming up this week for the Yanks, the Rays and the Orioles. So we're looking forward to see how they play. And then it's All-Star break. Where are you going to be available for us to talk to you next Monday about those 2 series?
We'll see. We'll find time someplace in there. I'm flying to Texas on Friday. And obviously Monday, when we usually do this, is the big day. It's the big media day.
Right.
And, day after the draft, home run derby that night. But, we'll even if we have to do it, the best time to do it, we're doing our business for the world here, is maybe Tuesday morning before the All-Star game, because besides the game that day, there's not a heck of a lot to do. And it's a downtime anyway. So
all right, let's pencil in Tuesday morning. Let's do this. Let's talk more about these Yankees. To your point, let's see how this season plays out, get one more sample size. I'll be interested to hear what you have to say. Joel, thank you so much, as always, for talking all Yankees baseball and listening to my crazy talk, man.
Get off the ledge.
Thank you.